Alright guys, so I'm just going to do a quick tutorial for my Sons of Horus. I've got a Praetor slash Legion Champion model here, made from some Deathwatch bits and the Mark IV Chaplain from Betrayal at Calth, with a couple of other bits in there. I'm going to be doing this in the standard Sons of Horus green, and using some chipping and an oil wash. So you're going to need white spirit, oil paints and gloss varnish if you want to do this. The paints I'm going to use are Cabalite Green, Sybarite Green, Gorse Blaster, Chaos Black, Wordbearer's Red and Burnt Umber, then a silver and a gold. The primer I'm going to use today is Mecha Primer from Vallejo. I like this because it gives a really nice smooth coat, and I'll just be shooting this through my airbrush. I usually mix that. Sometimes I'll also use this regular surface primer, but it jams the airbrush, so I'm going to skip it today. So I'll be mixing it here with some isopropanol and deionized water. It's quite weak, so it doesn't really damage the airbrush. But I use that for all my dilution. Alright, so let's get this primed quickly. And yes, I know how messy my workstation is. So I've got him primed. Unfortunately I won't be able to record while I'm actually painting because I have to hold my phone. But you can see here just how smooth the Mecha Primer is when it's dried. And this isn't that long. I gave this maybe 20 minutes. I also dried it off with a hairdryer, which is probably one of the best hobby investments I've ever made for about £10. At this point I'm kind of contemplating whether or not I should keep him black, but because mine aren't the first company of the Sons of Horus, I decided against it and went with the standard Sons of Horus green. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is our first layer. We'll be using Cabalite Green, and I really like this green. It's one of the best greens they do, and with an airbrush it takes almost no time whatsoever. But with this layer you really want to make sure that you focus on getting the underside of the model done, because this is going to be the shade colour, so everything else is going to be coming on top of this. Quite literally, because I'm going to be using a zenithal highlight on from above. So a really good, smooth and strong coat with this colour is really important. Next up we'll be using Sybarite Green, and we shoot that from the angle of wherever the light source will be coming, so sort of 45 degrees from above. And once we've done that, we'll be doing a similar but slightly higher highlight of Gorse Blaster. So at this point I believe I've put one layer of Sybarite down, and then I'll be putting the Gorse Blaster down over the top of it. If these videos are popular, if you like them, I'll get a proper video rig done up, so that I can actually show you what I'm doing while I'm painting. So yeah, this has got all the greens on it now. I cannot film to save my life, so it may eventually drift into focus. And you don't have to be neat at this point. You can just be pretty messy, because anything that's going to be black we're going to go over. Also, unlike me, please always wear a respirator when working with an airbrush, especially nowadays with all the concerns about respiratory illnesses. I just have no self-regard for my own personal safety, so I'm stubborn and pig-headed, which is not something you want to be. So I'm just trying to figure out here if there's any other spots that really need lightening up. I like to aim for things like the knees, the toes, the tips of the head, the vents on the pack, the hands, anywhere that you want to draw the eye to. And once we've done that, we're going to move on to the chipping, which I did with a brush and word bearers red, rather than using a sponge, because I wanted to control it and do some large chips this time. It can take a while, and you really have to focus on where you want the damage to be. So you have to kind of think, where is the natural wear and tear going to be? Where will this armour brush against the ground? You know, what's this marine going to be knocking against? You know, is he going to kneel down? Is there going to be wear and tear on his knee pads, on his ankles? Is it the tips of his toes? Just think about the places where you scuff your favourite pair of trainers first, and that's the sort of place you want to put your chipping. Also try to do it away from a lot of the edges, because you want to make sure you can get to the underside of it. Because once we've done this, we're going to go back over this, and on the bottom lip of each chip you want to use a little bit of Gorse Blaster, and that will give it a subtle optical illusion for a bit of a 3D effect. So if it's all against the edges, you won't have anywhere to put that. So just a little bit off the edges gives you a bit of room to work with. So I believe this is now finished. As you can tell, I'm recording this over it because the original dialogue was absolutely atrocious. Yes, there we go. So you can see the chipping there. Not too heavy. I went for a red because I wanted to do sort of a red oxide primer, as if that's the undercolour of their armour, not rust or anything like that. The complete opposite. And here you'll see what it looks like once you've got the Gorse Blaster on there. I was told that it looks like a can of Arizona iced tea, and I now can't unsee it. So you have to suffer that as much as I do. Luckily, while it does look really bright, that does get toned down when we move on to the oil wash. So don't worry about it looking super, super bright. That does all sort of tone down nicely. Now I'm just going to do all of the blacks, the golds, silver, reds, anything else that's going to be not the armour, basically. You do have to be a little bit neater at this point than you would normally. But one of the best parts of this paint job, and the fact that it takes so little time, other than drying times, is there's no edge highlighting, other than that, the chipping. And if you want to avoid the chipping, then there's no edge highlighting. So I'm going to skip straight to the end where we've done all the gold and metallics, and I've also given it a couple of coats of gloss varnish. Gloss varnish is really important because otherwise the white spirits that you thin the oil paints with will just strip the paint straight off the Mini. And you don't want to be rough with this when you are doing it anyway. You want to have a really light hand with your artificial brushes. So you do need white spirit. It's the only thing that's going to thin your oil paints. And again, unlike me, do make sure you work in a well-ventilated area. White spirit, isopropanol and all that are highly flammable, really toxic, and will really screw your lungs up. Just to prove you don't need to use expensive materials, that's a ridiculously cheap pot of burnt umber from Aldi, which cost me £2 for about 12 pots of paint. So yeah. And literally all you do is slop that onto the Mini, like you would if you were using Agrax Earthshade. You water it down with the white spirit and wash it all over the model, and then just use a clean brush mixed in white spirit to just wash it away from the areas you don't want it to be in. If you're feeling really adventurous, you can coax it into streaks and spots and tide marks and any other sort of weathering you really want. But if you're just going for a general wash like I did, it really is as simple as splotching it on and then watering it down and just splashing it everywhere. It doesn't look particularly great over the metallics, so I will go over those with some Agrax Earthshade once this is dry, which is going to take 24 hours. So through the magic of editing, we're going to jump forward, and I'm going to tidy up everything else and base the Mini. It will need another coat of gloss varnish before you do anything, but here it is. Completely finished and based. I went over it several times with lots more washes, acrylic washes. I used Druki Violet on the sword and then some Iron Breaker just to bring the edge out again. The gold, which was originally Retributor armour, I went over using Skullcrusher brass and a little bit of silver mixed in. And then added some decals from the Raptors kit onto the cloak, which then used some Forge World weathering powder, orange rust just on the edge of the cloak. Many coats of varnish over this, by the way. I'm honestly looking at about 6 mixed coats of gloss and matte varnish over and over again. But that's it. I hope that helps. Please let me stop talking now. Drop me a message if you need any help.